I am now recording,
Yes.
so don't say anything you don't want to say.
Wait, could you make me co-host? I didn't mean to give you all the
I have my
power.
headphones on. You can have it on.
Well, Kurt, I will try. Make you co-host.
Thank you.
Deal.
Close call. Close call.
Close call.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Wait, are we just gonna have so much fun tonight, Kurt? I'm
Yes,
kind of getting excited about it.
Do you know who's also more... Leslie's staring at me through the window making faces. Also, you know who's more excited than me? Ranger.
What's up, Ranger?
I hate webinars.
Welcome, y'all. So if you've never used Zoom before, welcome to Zoom. I'm gonna repeat this in a couple of minutes, but I'm gonna give you a quick intro. If you aren't speaking, just click your mute button so we don't get background noise and all the goofiness. But please do speak when there's like questions and stuff. So it's not that we don't want to hear from you, it's that we don't want to hear your background noise if you aren't kind of the center of attention. And if you're anything like me, you like to be the center of attention all the time. And if you're anything like Kurtz, you have important things to say. And
that was nice, Jack.
Kurtz, we haven't done one of these in a while. I'm excited to get back on the mic with you.
I know. We have so much to say.
Some of us have a lot of important things to say, and some of us just love to talk. You can pick.
Yeah, we'll let the audience decide who's who. I think we have like people who have signed up for this. So congrats to all of you, the early crowd. I wish we could offer some sort of prize or like, I don't know, the best refreshments or something.
Oh, I know a prize. I've got a prize for you. It's already free, but you might not know about it. And you can just go to thesummercampsociety.com/free stuff, or just go to the summercampsociety.com, and then in the top bar, navigation bar, there's a thing called free stuff. Just sign up, and there's staff training sessions, free all camp games. It's all free. Just take it. Use it. Cover up our logo and put your own logo on it if you want.
Wow.
I don't care. Cool. I don't care who gets credit for it. Just have a great summer.
What was that? That's what we would sign in yearbooks. Hags. Anyone? Yes, I have one smile from like, okay, Nia's on board with me. I needed that.
I went to an all boys Jesuit high school. We did not do a lot of signing nice things into yearbooks.
You signed other things.
Yeah, a lot of inappropriate jokes, things that I wouldn't recommend.
Things that were not camp appropriate.
No, correct. That's correct. But my my capital campaign that we're running for our camp now is definitely looking into my alumni of my all boys Jesuit high school. So you gotta like kind of take the wins and the losses. Kurt, will you take the lead here? I'm getting a couple texts from people who are trying to log in.
Yeah. So if you're just joining us, welcome. At the top right of your screen, you'll see there's two different functions. There's speaker view, and then there is just like one that looks like the Brady Bunch. So you can choose which one is better for you. Speaker view might be more fun because then Jack and I won't be so tiny and we're going to be doing most of the talking, but you can just toggle back and forth. And then the other thing we ask you to do is if you're not talking at the moment, to keep your microphone on mute. Not that we don't want to hear what you have to say. We just don't want to hear what your dog has to say or your smoke detector or your cell phone or whatever could be in the background. So to do that, you just kind of hover your cursor over your face, and then there's three dots that appear on the right, and then you just can mute yourself that way. And occasionally Jack or I might mute you if you forget. So don't take it personally if you're muted. But if you are responding to a question or you have a question, you can just unmute yourself for that moment. And then the other thing for you to know is that there's a chat function. So there's a speech bubble on the bottom of the page. It says chat. And if you click on that, you will get a white window that appears to the right. Jack and I will put some links in the chat. You can also do like real-time questions in the chat. We love jokes, anything like that, but just keep your eye on the chat as we go along, because there'll be some good information in there. This is a 90-minute crash course, so we're going to have some participant interactions, but a lot of it's going to be me and Jack talking. So the chat window is going to be a way for you to participate. That doesn't take like a ton of time for everyone to like go around the room and say the thing, because then our 90 minutes would be up and we wouldn't have learned anything. So to start, we'd love it if you open the chat window and introduced yourself. So and I will say what I'll type into the chat, what I'm going to say now. So we'd like you to share your name, your camp name and location, what you do there. And we also want you to share your dorkiest quality. So if you could send that all in one fell swoop, you could use commas or semicolons or any other punctuation of your choice. We'd love to see those kind of appear in the chat just to get an idea of who we have in the room. And yes, so go ahead and do that. And we'll do that for the first couple of minutes while people come in. Oh, Jack's answer to his dorkiest quality is the same as if I asked him what his least campy quality was, which is he doesn't really like the outdoors. So great answer.
No, the outdoors are fine, but
it doesn't do it for you.
Yeah, it's like fine. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like everyone, like all the camp people I know are like, yeah, the outdoors are the best thing ever. It's like, no, the outdoors are fine. That's not the point of camp, though. Camp is about kids, but some people's camps are about nature. I get it. Everyone gets to have their own thing. We haven't even met, and I'm telling you the things that might make you like me the least. Whoops.
Yeah, that's all right. This is like a safe space.
Okay, I love safety.
All right, Katie Gilman winning the game. Okay, there are like 40 other of you. No, there's 30 others.
Now. This is great.
There we go. Julia, Alice. Great.
Julia, say. Oh, Cynthia, say hi to our friend. I just blanked so hard on Joe's name. I apologize. Joe, I love you. When you watch this later, we're still friends.
That's like May camp director brain for you.
Yeah, my brain is 1,000% fried already. I need to.
Okay, Phil participates in national birding competitions. Like I almost just need him to unmute and describe more, but I'm gonna resist and just put that back to my pocket. Like how is it a competition? Like you saw the most, but how do you prove it? I'm so confused.
Wait, okay, Carrots, come on. Can we give Phil 1 minute on the mic here? Come on, Phil.
Okay, Phil, how do you compete as a birder? 1
minute on teaching. Whoa. This is a 60-second seminar on birding.
Who even are you? Okay. Where's your face?
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're doing great.
So it's all done online, and it's pretty much like honor code. You just have a set amount of time to spot the most species of birds in like the contiguous United States. Whoever has the most after the end of the set amount of time wins.
Is it like Pokemon Go?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, you have to spot them, and then you log them online. There's like a website. It's pretty fun.
Phil, do you do birding with kids at camp?
I do. It's really hard to get them to like birds sometimes. It's not always the most popular skill activity, but you know, I do my best.
You do your best. I love that. Our friend Steve, who's like Steve McGuire, who does like a bunch of camp trainings and stuff. He's a huge birder, and he teaches in high schools. Or he teaches in a high school, and he runs a big ornithology class that he says is like one of the most popular science options for kids to take. I don't know if I buy it, but they do get to leave class to go like hang out in the woods, which is fun.
Love you.
So I'm into that. All right, so we're gonna start with the content in about 1 minute. And counting down. I feel like everyone who's going to join us is probably here. I think some people are probably counting on the recording. Oh, there's friends from Camp Burkett. Hello, neighbors.
I was just at Camp Burkett.
You went to Burkett when you were here?
Yeah, I was hanging out with Nelson, and Scott was teaching George how to lead a bunch of stuff. It was a great time.
Oh, right. I
It
do
was
that.
it was very cold, and there's no heat, so that was kind of bad planning, but it's okay.
Right. It's all right. All right. Cool. Well, if you're just arriving, please introduce yourself in the chat. Catherine says sorry about the no heat, Jack. So,
Catherine, it's not your fault. It's Scott's fault for poor planning, and I still love him, and I'm sure we would be friends too.
Okay, let's get started. And also to let everyone know, if you didn't read it in the intro email, we'll be sending out like a summary of everything we talk about. So if you're a note taker, by all means, go ahead. If you just want to sit back and listen, you will be getting notes. And also, we will be sharing the recording with all of you, and you'll have access to it for a limited period of time. So don't feel like super pressure to write every last thing down. So we're just going to start off with our first. We have these like little units just so we know how we're tracking. So we have 4 units throughout our time together tonight. First, we're going to talk about some like foundational camp leadership stuff. The second one, we're going to talk about establishing the supervisory relationship or getting ready for summer. The third one is about coaching. So figuring out how do we get people up to snuff and then shepherd them through their summer experience. And then finally, we're going to deal with kind of like tough situations or correction type situations. So we're going to try to get through a ton of content tonight. Before we start, you probably want to know who Jack and I are. So Jack, will you do like that, your quick elevator speech about who you are? And no, I'm going to do it the other way around. I'm going to introduce Jack and he's going to introduce me. Whoa, didn't tell him that beforehand, but that's okay. So Jack is a camp director. He lives in Rochester, New York. His camp is called Camp Stomping Ground that he founded with his partner, Laura. They've been running Camp Stomping Ground for 5 years, and I would say it's experienced exponential growth. It's a camp based on radical empathy. But Jack and Laura didn't just start Stomping Ground because they read about it on the internet. They actually did a 2-year-long research project together where they visited more than 200 summer camps and kind of picked up the best bits and pieces in camping along the way. So they know every camp almost. They know so many people in camping, but they're extremely creative thinkers, and that's how Stomping Ground came to be and continues to grow. Jack also is an engineer by education, so he thinks in a little bit of a different way than most camp people that I encounter. So that's Jack's introduction. How'd I do?
That was great, Kurtz. You're so good. I was just trying to write my introduction for a website, and I did a bad job. And then I made George write it. George is my friend who's 6'6". I call him Big Boy, like from Outcast. Kurtz, or Sarah Kurtz McKinnon, if you were to be a business professional, but I like to call her Kurtz, and I hope you do too. Kurtz was one of the youngest executive directors in the YMCA camp movement at Camp Algonquin, which is part of the Algonquin Y, a part of the Ann Arbor Y. She loves dogs, her baby Shiloh, and making camps better. That was just a nice little pitch I was trying. I don't know. Kurtz didn't go to camp, went to camp a little bit as a kid, but really fell in love with camp as a staff member at Algonquin, worked there for a bunch of years, then realized that she wanted to try and impact kids' lives in a different way. So she left Algonquin as the director after it grew dramatically and was full under her watch for 6 years. Nice. And went to get an MBA, not an NBA, although she does like basketball.
I read
from Michigan, the University of Michigan, Ross School of Business, fancy business school. And now Kurtz travels around the country and does all this kind of stuff to help camp directors and people who run camps do a better job and kind of make more impact. So the cool part about Kurtz is that she has a ton of camp experience, cares about kids, can kind of hang with 6-year-olds going wild in the arts and crafts space, as well as kind of think about your pro forma business plan or all the businessy things. And so how do you connect the idea of kids having a great time, making the world a better place with the money that makes camp work, which is this fascinating thing that most of the time I get annoyed with business people being too businessy, or kind of like camp people not getting that it also has to be a business for the camp to continue. And that's one of the best parts about working with Kurtz.
So fun to introduce each other. Thank you, Jack. So I think that Jack's probably a good boss, and Jack kind of teed me up as maybe I was a good boss. Who knows? We've never worked really for each other, but we've also worked for other people. And I think about the bosses that I had throughout, my time coming up, and some of them are good and some of them are bad. Could you just like raise your hand in general if you've ever had a bad boss? Okay. All right, great. So you could type into the chat a quality that made, someone raised their hand digitally. I love it. I'm so happy. So cool. So could you type into the chat what made your boss bad, or if you are interested in sharing to the large group, let's just take like 2 quick comments from the audience about maybe a short anecdote or a short comment about what made that boss bad. Anybody want to volunteer information? Lack of communication, lack of transparency. Okay, micromanaging, not leading by example. All right, I'm seeing a lot of micromanaging coming on, controlling and contradictory. Oh my. Okay, good, demeaning. Okay, so great. Okay, great. Okay, yep. So we know what a bad boss looks like. I think overall, we can learn as much from our quote unquote bad bosses as we had from our good bosses. With that in mind, has anyone ever had a bad boss at camp or in the camp environment? It's okay if you have. I have. I've had bosses who like only come out of the office when it's time to fire someone, right? Has anyone ever had that boss at camp where you like never see them unless something like really bad is going down? Or the boss that like kind of like preaches the policies and procedures, but then is like partying really hard on time off with the rest of the staff, and you're just like, what are the real rules? That sort of thing. Like that's that hypocrisy coming in.
I had a boss who would always just say like one thing to one group of people and then have totally different rules for another group of people. And then when he got kind of like caught making mistakes, he would just always go buy milkshakes from McDonald's, not leave a note, but just be like, here's milkshakes, and then not apologize. It was wild. We called it bribe.
You still take the snack, right? You're kind of like, I'm mad, but like, I forgive you.
Yeah, the bribe shakes were fun, but didn't really solve the problem.
Right. Bribe shakes. Good. That's your first piece of advice for the seminar. So did any of you as supervisors like sign up for this job to mess it up, like to ruin things? No? Really? Do you think any of your bad bosses or your bad camp bosses in the past had signed up to like ruin things or be a bad boss? Like, did Jack's, I love it when the no's come in the comments, it's so affirming. Did Jack's like milkshake giving boss sign up for that summer to say like, wow, I'm really gonna have to bribe my staff to like me every time I mess up and I'll just buy milkshakes? Like it probably wasn't his plan, right? But camp leaders are sometimes bad bosses because camp is hard, right? And people are weird. Parents, staff, coworkers, you're weird because you're a complex human being. And nobody, I think, signs up to do a job to do a bad job. And so we want to think about how we overcome human emotions, we overcome decisions that are out of our control or situations out of our control, we overcome exhaustion, and we overcome ourselves caring a lot because sometimes we get in the way of ourselves because we care a lot. So we want to acknowledge that it is easy to be a bad boss at camp, and that's okay. And some days you're like 50% a bad boss and 50% a good boss, or 90% a bad boss and 10% a good boss, or 90% a good boss and 10% a bad boss, or whatever it is.
Or a great boss for some people, and a boss that doesn't really connect with other people.
Right.
That's okay too. If Kurtz and I were the boss, a bunch of you would love me and a bunch of you would love Kurtz, and we would seem like bad bosses to some of you and great bosses to other of you, and that's complicated and hard. And that's what we want to do, is try and take it from, if right now I was going to be a pretty decent boss for 50% of you, how can we get to 60, 70%? Or if I was going to be a great boss for 90% of you, let's get to 95. And let's realize that it's going to be hard and it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to be like, oh, like we just do this like thing, we follow this script and that's the answers. But that's not going to be what it's going to be like, right? Like that's not how people work, and y'all have your own style and we have our own style. But how do we get a little better? And that's what we're going to try and do over the next hour and 13 minutes.
Wow, great math. And also recognizing that this is more complex in a camp setting. If you are in overnight camp, you also are like living with these people that you have to supervise, and that is totally weird, and that's not something they ever teach you about in business school. It adds an extra level of intensity. And even if you're not in an overnight camp, you're still kind of like co-parenting in a really intense way a lot of children with these folks. And so just recognizing that this is a challenge, and to be kind, not just to your staff, but kind to yourself, that, you know, this is a complex thing is pretty important to remember. So I will put an article in the chat just for your perusal. You don't have to read it right now, but this is an article by Bob Ditter, who's like a great camp consultant and psychologist. And he wrote a camp-oriented article about the difference between kind of traditional historic leadership and transformational, what he calls post-heroic leadership. And so this is the way, instead of thinking, okay, what does the bad camp boss do, or the negative camp boss, he thinks about what a transformational camp leader does. And so these are kind of the themes that we want to carry through the more concrete recommendations that we're going to make in the course. So Jack is putting those in the chat. I don't have to like read them out loud to all of you, but that is like just a really helpful thing to think about, instead of thinking about how do I get people to do something, or how do I get the task done. This is more about creating a culture that nurtures, motivates, and moves toward a common vision or goal, instead of the taskmaster who's forcing things to be accomplished. So we really encourage you to read that article after the fact, or bring it back to your leadership team and have a discussion about it, book club style, because we find it to be very helpful.
And over the next little bit, what we're going to try and do is break down some like really tangible skills and tangible ways of going about having conversations and working with folks. And the idea isn't that these are like the prescriptive answers, that this is the only way to run camp and to be a leader at camp. But what it is it gives you a framework to start. And then you can say like, oh, like they said something about Professor Prem. Well, I'll take a little bit of that, but I'm going to take my own spin on that. Or they were talking about to serve as a model for those goals and values. It's like, okay, cool. What does that mean for you? Right. So this is just the beginning, hopefully, for you to be able to take some of the stuff you already know, because all of you are probably already pretty awesome at working with folks, and like taking those skills and just having that like baseline to get started, where being a leader at camp is like a constant thing that I'm working on, right? Like I've worked at camp for, this will be my 15th summer working at camp. And I like constantly get better and a little worse probably in different ways. And so like, that's going to be true for y'all too. Right. And so I hope this is the jumping off point. And Kurt, back to you.
Great. So we want to think, before we go into the summer, this is part 2. So how am I going to establish the supervisory relationship with the staff members that are going to be in my care for the summer? So it's kind of like before your campers arrive, and I don't always love the like staff members are our campers analogy, but in many ways it is helpful, because before the staff get here or get to camp and we are leading them in an active way, we really want to think about how do we want to set ourselves up for success, set all of us up for success. So I'd say the first most important thing to remember is the fact that we are humans who are supervising other humans. And because of this, our personalities, preferences, histories with these other people, outside influences, the world at large will impact our supervisor-supervisee relationship. So even if I was your boss and I am me consistently, but I had each of you as my supervisees, my relationship with each of you is going to be very different. And it's going to be different today than it is tomorrow, just because everything moves in our human world. So remember that flexibility and that ability to know that we have to kind of tailor our approach to each individual, and make sure that it's applicable. We can't just say, this is my style, take it or leave it. We have to say, okay, who am I supervising? How am I going to connect with them? So we are going to go through some crucial things that you can do before camp even starts to build this foundation of mutual respect and positive relationships with your staff team. We think that the supervising process or like the leadership process at camp is continual. It already started when the first time these staff decided to apply to your camp or look on your camp's website, and it keeps going even before they get to camp and after they leave. So it's with an I, Jack. Jack, with that, are we ready to jump into the things to do before camp?
Kurtz, I think I'm ready.
Okay.
Kelly, are you ready? I think Kelly's ready.
Oh, you're asking individuals. Yeah, she loves it. She loves it. Okay. So the first thing to think about is thinking about who you supervise. And so what I do before camp starts is I want to make a list of everyone that I'm going to supervise. And this might be something I get from my boss, but I really want to know like who is going to be on my team before camp starts. So I'm going to write their name down, and this is just a reference for me. And I'm going to write down like my relationship with them. So this could be like they were my co-counselor last summer. This could be I've never met this person before. Really anything in between. And then I want to write down some things to consider. So I'll give you an example. So let's see, let's just do a little screen share here. This is just from like a little PowerPoint. Y'all can see the screen share, right? Give me a little nod if you see it. Yes. Great. Okay. So I would write down or make this even for my staff, the name of the people that I'm supervising, their relationship to me, and things to consider. Val knows some of my past mistakes, or David and I had a major conflict last summer. We haven't spoken, so we must make a plan to break the ice. Just like really getting grounded in who is going to be part of my team for the summer, and then like thinking through my relationship, existent or not, with them is an important thought exercise. And then I want to create a plan for each of those individuals. So maybe David, for instance, I had a conflict with last summer, but I'm supervising him this year. So instead of waiting for something bad to happen this summer and for it to be like really awkward, I might call him before camp starts and be like, hey man, like excited to get to camp this summer with you. Like I know we didn't end last summer on the best note, but I'd love to get together and like talk about our plan for this year, because I really want to make it a good summer and I'm excited to work with you again, right? And so make a time to go out for lunch, go out for a drink, go for a walk, run an errand together before the heat of camp starts, and just kind of clear the air. Same thing for someone who might be a friend. So maybe you're supervising your roommate. Like I've done that before. That's a weird one. And so maybe I have a conversation with her before camp starts and I say, listen, like, you know all my secrets, I know yours, and I'm going to be your supervisor this summer. Like, let's talk about it before, you know, it happens, because I don't want it to be awkward. Right. And so just have that real conversation. my biggest tip for those real conversations, if you're planning those, is to ask the question. Say, I respect your opinion. I'm excited for the summer. I'm excited to work with you. I value your advice. You know me very well. Like, what advice do you have for me? Right. And so we're immediately kind of starting off with that mutual engagement, or that foundation of respect, instead of I'm the boss now, you have to listen to me. Right. So that is really helpful. All right, Jack, which one do you want to do next?
Chris,
Yeah.
I think what you're really saying here is like one of the best things that we can do as leaders at camp and as people who are supervising individuals is to have kind of like a two-pronged approach on this. One is like, what is like the systematic thing that I'm doing? And that's making a list of each person, going through. And for me, that's the harder part. I'm not as like systematic of a person on those kind of things. I'm like, I don't know, like I'm moving really fast. And so when I need to think about is how do I get a list of the 10 people that I'm supervising, the 30 people I'm supervising, whatever it is, write down their names, write down these kind of things. And I have to work a little harder on that piece. And the part that I'm maybe a little bit like is more intuitive for me is the second part that you're saying, which is how do I do the little parts of connecting with individuals and giving them some understanding of where I'm coming from. And I think that as a new leader is the hardest part, is to say to someone, and our friend Sil likes to talk about it like using your frame of reference or like your lens of the world as the way to open the conversation. And so instead of saying like, this is how it's going to be this summer, or this is what you need to do, saying like, hey, Kurtz, like, this is where I'm coming from, right? Like, this is my first time in this new role, and I'm pretty nervous because in the past, you and I like have been really good friends, but now I'm supervising you, and that's like a little bit weird, and I'm nervous that I'm going to hurt our relationship, and I won't be able to do my job that well. And I'm hoping we can figure out how to do this together because like we both care about camp and whatever. Like, and I said it almost like a robot there, so y'all got to do it in like the way that you would say it to like your people in your own voice. But to instead of starting from a place of, hey, this is what needs to happen and this is whatever, saying like, this is what I am concerned about, and kind of owning that responsibility as the person in the conversation. And that's really hard to do. It's hard to do with your friends, and it's hard to do with people that you don't know that well. But I want to push you to kind of start from that perspective, as opposed to like, I have the answers and this is what we're going to do, because we don't have the answers necessarily.
Right. Well, and having that list, even if you're more of a natural at the conversations, we all have biases about, and just like an inability to remember all the things. So getting in the habit of like keeping the list and making sure I talk to all the people and doing the hard one, right? So Katie just posted, what if it's a close friend who got passed up for the leadership position that you were selected to do? Like, that's one of those conversations I'd be like, I'm just not going to do that one. But like, everybody knows it. Like, she knows it, that she didn't get selected for it. You know it. So like, not saying it doesn't make it not exist, right? So I would just, everyone's style is going to be different, but I'd just be like, so let's imagine like Jack got passed up for the leadership position and I got it, just because we're going to pick on Jack a little bit tonight. So I'd just be like, hey, Jack, like, this is kind of awkward. Like, I know you also really wanted to be the head counselor this summer. And I'm so glad you're still, like, you still decided to camp. I botched that. Don't say that. I'd say, Jack, like, I to be head counselor this summer, and like, it's awkward that I am and you're not, when I know that you also have a ton to contribute to camp. So I just want to like put it out there and tell you that I respect you, and I'm so glad we're on the same team this summer, and I want your advice and I want your feedback, and I know that like you're just going to be like a really important leader. Now, you don't want it to be like condescending, right? But just like putting it out there and affirming the person, and affirming that they're going to be a contribution, is, in my opinion, really important. And like, just ignoring it, being like, oh, like, how's your job as like assistant waterfront helper, like, is not good either. So like, I think just saying it is important. Okay, great. So a few more things. We also encourage you, if you have something to do during staff training, like if you're leading workshops or you have responsibilities, to try to do them before staff training starts. Ask your camp director, hey, can I get a little paid time before staff training starts to plan my sessions, etc. Because we really want you to be present during staff training instead of being like, oh my gosh, I have to plan the 3 o'clock session during the 2 o'clock session. Then you're not present, you're not contributing, you're not moving with the group, right? So think about what are things that are upcoming that you know are upcoming that you can kind of do in advance and clear off your plate so you can be present during staff training is going to be a crucial step. Jack, next.
I think another big one is call some staff members who you've worked with in the past or are going to work with in the future and ask for some feedback. Say, hey, like, I'm nervous about going into this role and you have a lot to say. Can you help me with some things that you think I'm going to be great at or I'm going to struggle with in this role? People who have done the role in the past or people that you've worked with closely tend to be the best people. And in that, like, what I like to do is like get the things I like chocolate. So I might like bring some chocolate to that phone call because like listening to people, like, even when they are really nice, it still hurts sometimes when they're like, yeah, like sometimes you're like a little bit disorganized and like it's like hard for me to stay on schedule. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not even fun. And then I just get mad. But like just like be ready to hear some like even when it's a little bit tough to hear, it still like can hurt a little bit. So get the chocolate and make the hard phone call, easy phone call kind of situation is what I like to do.
But that's like such good modeling, right? Like some of the feedback that we get from camp directors and camp leaders a lot is like, my staff can't handle feedback, like they're scared of it. But if we start the summer off by demonstrating that we're receptive to feedback and we model how to receive the feedback, whether that's like we're modeling eating the chocolate or modeling asking a follow-up question or actually making the change. Yeah, the milkshakes, Kelly, love it. We're modeling how we want feedback to be received by receiving it first. Then we're setting ourselves up for more success when we actually have to give the feedback later on. And so that is going to be really crucial. We also think that you can use a function like Zoom, so like this video chat, to set up some sessions with your staff before the summer starts. So imagine you're the aquatics director at a large day camp. Well, you've got, let's say, 20 lifeguards coming in who you haven't met before. Well, you could message all of them and say, hey, tomorrow night I'll be hanging out in Zoom from 7 to 9 p.m. Like, here's the link, come chat. Love to get to know you, answer your questions, that sort of thing. And maybe ask a couple of returners to be there the whole time with you, right? So you're starting the dialogue, you're establishing your approachability, you're getting some of those questions out of the way before people get there, and you're revealing what Sylvia, our friend who've been working on, is calls the hidden curriculum, right? So these are like the cultural rules or the norms that a place or a culture has that aren't necessarily obvious to somebody, right? So if I'm a new lifeguard coming in, I might not know like what kind of bathing suit do I need to wear, or I don't know what the locker rooms are like, or things that might be making me nervous. But if my supervisor provides a forum where I can get my questions answered in a safe space, I can see some faces before I get to camp, I'm so much more comfortable with knowing what to expect and what maybe unwritten rules I need to follow. I'm being set up for so much more success going into the summer. So thinking about using Zoom, or even finding some returners from last year who you could even pair with newbies as like a mentor-mentee situation. Ask them to just make a call to the new person, introduce themselves. So your connection isn't the only one that they have, that they're also connected to a returner, and suddenly they have more confidence coming into camp.
So it sounds like, Kurtz, there's like kind of 3 big areas to work on. One,
Okay.
Understand the people who we're going to be supervising. 2, try and connect with them individually around the things that we're nervous about coming into the summer, or just the things we're excited about, but having like kind of individual conversations. And then 3, creating a forum to kind of start to build the culture and fun and allow for some conversation in these larger-ish groups. So whether that's on Zoom or going bowling, or depending on like where the staff are coming from. And I would say in that last one, I used to be of the mind that it had, like, if I couldn't get everyone there, it wasn't worth it, right? Like if I had 10 staff that I was supervising and I couldn't get 10 people there, then like I didn't want that person to be left out or whatever. And I've totally shifted that mindset and said, like, any little bit is worth it. So if I can get 6 people out of 10 to come, if I can get 4 people to come, then we can start that culture building in these like smaller settings, as opposed to being like, it has to be everyone, because nothing's going to be everyone almost ever at camp. And so that's okay, because we can build that culture. And then the people who understand the culture tend to continue to set that culture. And I think we have a chance to do that through these Zoom calls or bowling or whatever the thing is that we might do. We went to Sky Zone, which is a trampoline park.
All right.
It was so fun. You should all do it.
You want to work a stopping ground, okay.
Sky Zone, it's great. You bounce. Your shoulders.
I know. I saw all the pictures, and I'm like, I'm mad because this looks really fun, and I live like 500 miles away, so it's fine. Just rub it in. The other thing I would add is, and this is a big mistake I made when I was a young supervisor, is I was supervising people I shouldn't have been supervising, and I didn't speak up about it. I supervised my sister. That was bad. I supervised like various people I had crushes on. That was bad. I supervised my roommate. That was bad. What I should have done is gone to my camp director. It's a little awkward to be like, so camp director, I've got a crush on this person. I shouldn't be their supervisor. So, you might want to play that one however you want, but you also might want to be like, hey, camp director, like, you might not know this, but Molly's my roommate, and like, maybe it'd be better if Jillian supervised her and not me. Right. So to be able to just like kind of put it out there before it's like July and you're like, great, like we've signed a lease together and now I'm writing up like a disciplinary report for this person, or I have to do her eval and it doesn't exactly seem fair compared with someone else I'm evaluating. I don't have as close of a relationship with, right? So just be able to set that boundary.
And you don't have to show up to your camp director and say, hey, Kurtz is my roommate, I shouldn't supervise her. You can show up and say, hey, Kelly, like Kurtz and I are going to live together. I don't know if you know that, but I'm nervous that it might be a weird kind of relationship in this situation. How do you think we should handle it? And then they might be like, well, what do you think we should do? And then have an answer. Like, I think that maybe it'd be better if Kurtz was in a different unit. Or, well, I wonder if she reports directly to you as opposed to me. Like, there's all kinds of complicated situations there. You don't have to have the exact answer, but to have a suggestion and to come with a problem. Almost always, people, when you come with a problem to a supervisor and an idea for a solution, they usually love it. And they're happy to have that conversation preemptively as opposed to like in the moment. Yeah, Kurtz, I know you're surprised, but when you go to trampoline parks, your shoulders tend to hurt afterward. It's kind of like whiplash in a car. But it's you wouldn't understand, Kurtz.
I don't get out much. Speaking of your supervisor, setting that foundation of success as a camp leader is not just important with the people that you supervise, but the people who are supervising you. So I would also encourage you to schedule a meeting with your camp supervisor before the summer really gets kicked off. This could even be a time on the phone. Just be like, I'm excited to talk with you about your vision for the summer and how I play into that vision. If you don't have a copy of your job description, ask your supervisor for that job description. Say, I'd like to walk through with you your expectations of me and my responsibilities for the summer, right? So it's very, very clear. So you're taking that proactive step and carving out 30 minutes of time with them before everybody else is there and the chaos really starts, is time that you probably will not have for the rest of the summer. So just to make sure that the relationship is firmly established going in both directions will really serve you well throughout the course of the summer. So I would definitely make that ask, and definitely your hands on a job description, because there are things that you might not know that you're expected to do or that you are planning on doing, but aren't in the job description. So you want to make sure that all of that is just appropriate. All right.
Kurtz,
moving on.
Kurtz, that was a lot. If you're anything like me, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, oh my gosh, that was a lot of information. Well, I want to reiterate, one, Kurtz is going to send everybody a bunch of the stuff we've talked about kind of written up. So if you were like, I think there was a cool idea, it'll come to you. Don't worry, no stress, in a nice little write-up. And two,
it's gonna take me like a couple of days though, but I will do it.
And two, let's take a pause, Kurtz, and see if there's any kind of questions on what we've been talking about, which was laying the foundation and then moving into between now and when staff orientation starts. And we're gonna send a blog post about staff orientation in the chat here. That I know I'm so fast, Kurtz. And you can use that as the foundation for what to do during staff orientation, and then we're going to move right into what to do once the kids arrive after this. So what kind of questions do you have about before kids arrive at camp? What can you do to set yourself up for success? You can post questions in the chat or unmute and ask.
Or do we just cover everything? We will also take questions, so you could also continue to think of things. Should we just keep going? We have so much to cover. Okay, getting generally unresponsive people involved before staff training. The only thing that I can say for that is reading everyone's staff application is really great. So you can start to understand what makes them tick, just like you would read a camper file. So maybe someone's unresponsive during staff training, or you think they're going to be unresponsive, but you find out like they're a total, archery fiend. And so let's give them, just like with campers, kind of like, let's give them a place to shine. So I'd get my hands on their application and then try to see, is there like a time I can carve out where they're going to be in their groove or in their zone, and other people can see them shining.
I love that, Kurtz. The other thing I would say is we always text now. Everything is text for us with staff. You all probably like text a lot more than like email or anything like that. And then the second thing I would say is use that staff application to find something that they love, and then just go Google around for a little bit so you know a little bit about what they love. So they said they love Game of Thrones or whatever. Send them like a funny meme from Game of Thrones and just be like, hey, just like thought it, and be authentic. Like if you just hate Game of Thrones, don't do that. Like that's not going to work.
Yeah, because then you're stuck pretending you like Game of Thrones all summer.
How do you get older counselors to want to come to all of training?
I think that has to do with the policies and expectation that your camp director sets. So some of it's just like maybe above our head. But I would also say that giving them opportunities to lead, not just to sit in, is really important. So maybe we're doing a conversation on homesickness or something, and we're going to do small group breakouts. And so instead of just randomly doing them, being like, okay, I need 6 breakout captains, I'm going to ask these older returning staff to be the breakout captain. So they have an assigned role that it's like we'll miss them if they're not there. Okay. So
these are really great questions, and we're going to try and get to more of them at the end. I like that. I like the theme here. I would say that in general, I like things that are fun, and I think you probably do too. And so I think spend some extra time to make some stuff fun. And I know that means that you have to go to your boss and like try and bully them into like being like, we're going to cover like slightly less content, but we're going to have more fun during staff orientation. Or we're going to do that because we're going to invest in the community, where that means that we won't get into level 15 of communication. And that's okay, but it's hard. And you can say that we said it was a good idea, because sometimes it's nice to have an outsider like be the one that's like, hey, I heard Kurtz and Jack talk about like making stuff fun. It was really a great idea. But Kurtz, speaking of being fun, what's next?
So we have 45 minutes left. We're going to blast through. Phil, that is a great question. And Catherine, that is also a great question. I'm going to table those for later on. Okay. So copy and paste that on your desktop, and let's return to them if we don't get to them. All right, so now we're going to talk about what to do when camp starts. So someone told me once that summer camp is like a roller coaster. So once it's left the gates, like it is not stopping until the end of the summer. And I think that is so real. So thinking about right at the beginning when we're climbing up in that roller coaster, we want to set strong precedents of how we expect interactions to happen, how we expect camp to go, not just how we expect them to do their job and interact with the campers, but how the relationship with you as our supervisor should go. So we'd like you to click in the chat and type into the chat what you want your staff members to say about you midsummer. So if Jack or I came to camp and we interviewed your staff members and we said, hey, like Mary Beth is your supervisor, what tell us about her. What is she like as a supervisor? What are some of the things that you would want to hear? So Karen, yeah, great. Okay, so let's type those in. Cool. Great. Okay, so yeah, so the themes that we see all the time when we ask this question is we want our staff to say that we're supportive, approachable, reliable, respectful, that we help them grow. Okay. But things can get in the way of this, right? And I think the biggest thing that can get in the way of this is just like the various responsibilities and circumstances of camp, right? I am not approachable when I have 300 kids and a thunderstorm's coming and evening program is ruined. I am just not approachable, right? But someone might remember the moment that I snapped at them when they asked me a personal question about something that they were dealing with during that time, more so than how I saved the day with the evening program, right? It's very easy to not be all the things that we wanted to be from the beginning. But we need to figure out how do we get in the majority, or how do we make the majority of our interactions these positive things? And then how do we just kind of like turn from what we would call reactive leadership to proactive leadership. So when I first started as a camp leader, I was definitely in the reactive leadership mode. So instead of like setting the tone or doing what I needed to do, I was just like basically putting out fires figuratively and literally, like the entire time. Like I'm just responding to things all the time, right? Jack, is that something that you experienced when you were a young camp leader? Not that you're not young.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. And I think I still do that in lots of situations that I just haven't done before. And I think it makes a ton of sense. And we have to be reactive a lot of the time, because if we haven't if we don't know what we're getting into, we have to be able to react. And the goal would be, as we get better and understand some more things, or we can just trust Kurtz and use some of her tricks, let's just start to do some proactive stuff ahead of time, and then see where else we need to be proactive, because we won't have thought of everything, but we can start and make it easier in so many ways.
So when I was a really reactive leader, basically I would like stay in my office or stay in like our staff lodge a lot, and wait for people to come and tell me things that happened. And then I'd like respond, right? And that was like kind of a hard way to live, right? Because by the time I found out about it, it was really too late. And as I changed my leadership style and became a more proactive leader, my physicality changed. So where I was during the day became very different. So instead of doing my incident reports sitting in the office at my desk, I did them sitting on our loading dock, which is a place where I could see like 180 degree kind of panorama of part of camp, right? And I could really see what was going on. And so instead of realizing like on Tuesday that, geez, I had like 6 incident reports on Monday, like what happened? I'd realize on Monday, oh my gosh, we're way out of ratio. I don't see a lot of counselors around here. What's going on, right? And I realized, oh, most of the counselors are in the dining hall practicing for skit night, and not enough people are out with the kids, right? And so in that way, I'm proactive. I can go in the dining hall and say like, hey guys, or hey folks, I can't break the habit. Skit is going to be great. And right now we're really out of ratio outside. So I need 6 of you to go out and be with the campers, because, things are getting a little wild out there without enough staff. Right. And so then I don't have 6 incident reports the next day. Maybe I only get 2. So just thinking about where your body is going to be really important. Okay. Jack, ready for part 3?
Yeah, Kurt, so are we having a special guest come for this one?
I believe we are. Wait. Yes, but should we do the introduction first while the guest is en route?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay. Don't jump the gun there. So in talking to some camp staff who admired their director, one of the camp staff said to us, we respect our director as our leader because we know that she respects us. Okay, so that's kind of like the theme that we want to get to moving forward. So we've talked about before camp, we shared an article about staff training. We've really thought about how we're going to set that up during the summer. But I have to speaking of special guests, it's not Ranger, but I have to let him in, so he stops barking.
So how do we set, we've done all this work to try and set people up, and then there's still going to be things that go wrong, right? Like there's going to be a million situations where we're going to be like, I thought we covered like you have to wear closed-toed shoes in the horse barn, or like you have to make sure that you are on time to, I don't know, everything. Like it's like, we definitely talked about this. I don't understand how we're missing this. And it was easy for me when I first got it started, and it's easy for me when I'm tired or when I haven't eaten enough to just assume that people are the worst and just get so cranky when things aren't going right. And I regularly am hangry at camp, and I forget to eat. I don't know if that happens to y'all. Like you're like, I don't know, like it's 5:30 and I haven't eaten one meal yet today. Like what was I doing? And guess what? We're worse at our jobs when we're hungry. So tip number 412 from Kurtz, eat.
So thinking about, we are human, right? And we are complex. And I think as new supervisors, I've noticed our human tendencies to fall into one of two categories, right? We want to build this foundation of mutual respect. But I feel like supervisors either become too like firm and intense, right? Because they want to show like, I've got this, everything's under control, I know what to do. Or they become too soft and relaxed. So they either want to win PowerPoints by exerting power or want to win PowerPoints by being like the cool boss, right? We can imagine that happening. And as camp leaders, for all of you, we want you to fall somewhere in between, right? We want you to kind of like strike this balance, and the balance often gets out of whack when something goes wrong, right? We talked about the easy stuff, building relationships and talking to different people during staff training and having those conversations. If something goes wrong, and it's easy to either be like, don't worry about it, no big deal, or like, what are you doing? And so this is when our special guest will be arriving to share our top tips. Where's Jack? Okay, humorous. Come on, laugh, laugh, laugh.
Well, hello, everyone. It's me, Professor Prem, here to talk to you about setting yourself up as a great camp leader. That's Prem, Prem, P-R-E-M.
Okay, I can't keep that accent up for this whole time because you won't listen, okay? But these are fun. These are Laura's glasses.
Yeah, can Laura see right now, Jack? Like, it's not cool to take her glasses as a costume piece.
She's out on a run, okay? You don't wear glasses when you're running.
All right, talk.
Laura helps me run camp. Actually, she runs camp, and I help her. You get the idea. And this is her cat from when she was a little girl. Look at it. Figaro. Anyway, Professor Prem is here to talk about, I'm going to keep the scarf though, right? That's good? Okay. So that's P-R-R-E-M, Prem, philosophy on tough conversations with staff when things might be going wrong, right? And the P is for positive intent. Assume positive intent when things are going on. Like I said, sometimes when we're angry or when we're hungry or when too many things are going on, it's easy to jump in and make some assumptions about what is going on and be like, Kurtz, you're the worst person ever. I've told you 1,000 times you can't wear that Barstool sports shirt about drinking and playing basketball or whatever. I don't know. That was a bad reference, Kurtz, but I was trying, okay? And like, it's easy to just jump in and just be like, Kurtz, take that off. This is embarrassing. You're the worst. What are you thinking, right? And oftentimes it's a lot better to come with like, yo, Kurtz, I don't know if you noticed, but like the shirt you're wearing has like beer on it And that's like kind of weird at camp, right? Like, and she's, if it was Kurtz in particular, she'd be like, oh my gosh, like, you're right. Oh my, holy smokes. Why did I? And she would just like sprint off to go take care of that problem in a way. And I think most people are like that, right? Most people, I think, that break rules or kind of are outside the lines at camp do that because they don't know camp well enough and they mess up and it's just a mistake, right? And so if we assume positive intent, we get to, set ourselves up for success going forward. And that ties right along in with number 2, which is the double R for balancing responsibilities and relationships. And this one, I think, is the one that comes right back to what Kurtz was talking a second ago about being really cool, trying to be too cool or trying to be too intense. And in any given moment, as a person, as a leader at camp, I think we're constantly balancing our responsibilities and our relationships, and we're balancing a million responsibilities and a million relationships. So think about that same example of Kurtz wearing a shirt that has beer on it and like a picture of beer on it, not like she's like covered in beer. And going up to Kurtz and being like, in that moment, I'm balancing, like, my responsibility is to make sure that like everyone is following the dress code, and I'm balancing that responsibility with the relationship I have with Kurtz, the relationship I have with everybody else around, and the relationship I have with my supervisor, right? And so how do I think about having that conversation? And so starting with assuming positive intent leads to that relationship staying probably a little tighter. But also maybe it means that I need to think about how to have that conversation, or if to have that conversation right now or later, which leads right into the E. So we've got positive intent, double R, relationships and responsibilities, and then E is emergency. And emergency, is it? So in that moment, it's easy at camp to just assume everything is an emergency, right? Like, I get so stressed. I'm like, Kurtz, you have beer on your shirt. I have to go over there and like get that off, right? But in the end, really, like, that doesn't really matter that much. I mean, it certainly is something that we're gonna change, but it's not. There's nobody's getting hurt. The barn isn't on fire. I can take a deep breath, and instead of like running right over there because I'm worried about the relationship that I have with my supervisor, and I'm worried about the fact that if I don't say something, then I'm like letting everyone down, and my responsibility is to uphold the rules or whatever. Like, to take a breath and go, okay, it's not an emergency. What's the best thing to do here? Like, how do I approach this situation? Should I just wait a minute and let Kurtz finish the activity? Because actually there's no person that's going to supervise those kids if I go talk to her. So if I go talk to her right now, all it's going to mean is that for the next 40 minutes, she's going to feel uncomfortable and sad and like all weird, and probably not do as good a job at leading archery because I can't step in for her because I have a million other things to do. So should I just wait 10 minutes until I can get someone to do some coverage? Can I just wait until the activity change because I know that Kurtz will just be able to just go get changed after that, right? Like, if it's not an emergency, then maybe I don't need to jump right in. Maybe I can, right? There's a million different situations, but to take a deep breath and go, is it emergency? Okay, probably not. Most things at camp aren't emergencies. So most of the time we react too fast, and we don't take 30 seconds to take a deep breath and make like a quick mental plan. So that's positive intent, double R, responsibilities and relationships. And then E, emergencies, is it? And then M is me. Am I the right person to have this conversation? And this goes back to what Kurtz is saying about all of the different people that we are supervising. When Kurtz is supervising her sister or the guy she has a crush on or whatever, like, maybe not in every situation is it best for her to be the one that does that, right? And so we have to have some mental stock of those kind of things. And let's say that Kurtz and I both were up for the head counselor role at camp, and Kurtz gets it, of course, and I don't. And then I'm wearing open-toed shoes like when you're not supposed to. Like, is it necessarily the best idea for Kurtz to be the one to have the conversation with me in that moment? Or could Kurtz, because it's not an emergency, and to balance the relationship and the responsibility, and assuming positive intent, would it be better for her to just be like, yo, Katie, will you talk to Jack real quick about the shoes? Like, we have like a little bit of tension, and it's probably better for me to save that like really like kind of tougher conversation for something that matters more in the grand scheme of things. Like if she needs to sit down and talk to me about like more, I would say more important things than like wearing open-toed shoes at a time when it's like not the best situation to be wearing open-toed shoes.
And the me thing is really hard too, because as a new supervisor, someone's like, oh, me, yeah, I am the right person to handle this, right? So to be able to recognize when you do need to step up and step in, because at camp, what happens is everyone in a situation defers to the person in the room with like the most experience or the most important title, right? So if I don't say something, but I am the person to say it, everyone's going to be like, oh, well, Kurtz didn't say anything about Jack Sandals at the climbing tower, so it must be one of those rules that's like written but doesn't really matter, right? And so thinking about when do I recognize like, yes, I do need to say something, and there could be a consequence for me not saying something, because my silence also sends a message that will create people to make or drive people to make certain decisions.
Well, and Kurtz, that was me, Professor Prem, with the Prem style of tough conversations. That's assuming positive intent, P, R, responsibilities and relationships, and E, emergencies. Is it? Me. Am I the right person to have this conversation? Figaro and I will be back later, but goodbye.
Thank you, Professor. Okay, I know we're like total dorks for making Professor Prem, but as a little side note, like being weird at camp is still so crucial to being successful as a camp leader. My first summer as a supervisor, my supervisor, Patty, sat me down after like week 3, and she's like, "You're not having any fun." And I was like, what? Like, but I'm a supervisor, like, da, 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 da. And she's like, have fun. And camp got so much better after that, because I was actually enjoying it and modeling things and not being like too proud or too cool or too important to put on a costume. And so that is something I would encourage you to ask yourself at the end of the day, like, did I get dirty today? Did I do something weird? Did I go outside? And those things will help keep you very grounded in the real work of camp. Oh, okay. So speaking of being weird, I'll do this very quickly.
But I'm also a baby witch. And I'm going to tell you about how to make quick corrections at camp. So, I can't find my witch hat. I'm really pissed about it. But it's okay. So, sometimes people at camp do stupid things, but it's not like they really meant to mess up.
And you'll have to say something. So we have a little bit of a quick correction framework for you to use.
So we've got the Professor Prem framework for thinking about tough conversations, and then that includes all tough conversations from really simple stuff to the tiny quick corrections. And we're going to start with quick corrections and then kind of build up into level 2 and possibly level 3 conversations about what is challenging behavior at camp. But quick corrections starts with things that aren't the hugest deal. They are the things like wearing the wrong t-shirt or forgetting to wear the right shoes. And we're assuming positive intent in this and trying to give the person the benefit of the doubt and start from a framework of like, yo, you just got to fix this thing real quick. No big deal. It's like, we're not getting into like, we're going to write you up or anything like that. It's like, we're just trying to, in the moment, fix something. Kurtz or baby witch, whoever's talking
No,
to
it's going to be me. The witch left. Like, she just dissipated. Okay, so K is for kind. So quick corrections should always be kind. There's no reason to be mean. Usually these are just like an oopsie. You can still be firm, clear, and kind at the same time. The I is for immediate. So we find that when supervisors wait to make a correction, 2 things happen. If they wait, they tend not to do it. You have so many things to remember at camp. So if you like put it off, it's probably just not going to happen. It also just seems like a much bigger deal than it really is to your staff member if you wait a long time or even more than a few moments to talk with them about a situation. So if Jack was wearing the wrong shoes this morning and I came up to him at dinner and was like, I need to talk with you about the climbing wall this morning, he's like, oh crap. And that's really bad. It's like way easier just to do it in the moment. And then the D stands for discreet. Nobody likes to be called out in front of peers or campers, and like publicly shaming or disciplining a staff member will lose that foundation of respect and also shatter their confidence. So just talk with them individually or kind of off to the side, or like just a quick little comment in their ear is enough. The exception to the discreet guideline is that if a counselor is doing something dangerous in front of campers, you can't be discreet. So I had a counselor I supervised at canoeing when I was a young supervisor who would always dive off the dock into the water. And so I had to correct her in front of the campers because I didn't want the campers to do the same thing, right? And so that was a time I had to correct her in front of the kids. So let's just do a couple of quick corrections. So like if a counselor had semi-inappropriate music playing in the background during arts and crafts time, I might just go and press the button to move it to the next song and like give them a little like that face and just move forward, right? If it's the first time it happened, it was probably an oopsie. It's not a big deal. If it's like the 20th time it happened, we'll discuss that later, right? But that was kind. It was immediate. It was discreet. That's like, oopsies. I see you. I hear you. We can't do this, but we move forward, right? Like sometimes that's enough for a quick correction. Like Jack, what would you say if one of your counselors like left their buddy tag up on the board at swimming and you noticed it? Like they're getting out of the water and they like walk past the buddy board, but you see them do it.
Yeah, just walk over. I would probably just walk over, depending on if it was when they're right at the buddy board or past it, walk over and just move the buddy tag over and be like, yo, dude, I took your buddy tag off for you. Next time, just grab that as you go, so we don't have a messed up count. Or if I was like on the other side and they were closer, I'd walk up to them and kind of say, yo, don't forget to take your buddy tag off. No worries, just for next time, right? Buddy tag, way to track swimmers. Great point.
Okay. Do we have any questions about the kid quick corrections? The trick with quick corrections is to do them. Our friend Scott Arizala gives the analogy of a shark attack when he talks about corrections at camp. So does anyone know what you're supposed to do if a shark is swimming after you or you're about to get attacked by a shark? Anybody know? Okay, punch him. Yeah. Lindsay, great. You will survive. If you keep swimming like away from the situation, the shark is just going to eat you, right? And it gets worse and worse and worse, and you get more tired. So Scott says, something happens, just punch that shark right away. Don't let it get so big that it's going to tire you out and eat you, right? It's a lot easier to like give that quick correction about that counselor playing the inappropriate music the first time it happens, and it's like the 30th time and you have a parent complaint and someone posts a video on social media of the kids like making a cheer to the inappropriate song, right? Like don't let it get out of control. Just kind of nip those things in the bud. Oh, I like that, Jack. That's a great idea. Okay, level 2 corrections. So I'm going to describe this framework really quickly, and then we'll do a couple of examples. So level 2 situations, this is more of like a coaching situation. So this is when you've identified it's not just an oopsie, but I have a staff member who has like a skills deficit or a slightly more difficult problem than a plain old oops. Especially in the beginning of the summer, camp is like really unusual. There's a lot to remember. A lot of times people need a little bit more than a nudge in order to figure out how to do the right thing. Right. And so this is actually adapted from a kind of a dorky book called Whale Done that my friend Karen Christopherson from Sherman Lake shared with me several years ago. But I think it's really helpful. And again, we'll send this out, but let's just talk through it. So let's imagine that a counselor that you're supervising is arriving late after her break to afternoon activities. And it's happened for the first 2 days in a row in its first session. Right. So what are some like reasons that she could be late to those activities? On some of our campuses, maybe she got lost. These are some positive intent reasons. Maybe she doesn't know what time the activity starts. Maybe she has some campers that are being difficult that she can't get out of her cabin in time after rest hour. Like there could be a number of things going on. There's also a possibility she just kind of sucks at time management, right? So no matter what's going on, there's like a skills or a decision-making deficit. So we need to coach her through this. And let's imagine her name is Emily. So the first thing we're going to do is describe the error or problem as soon as possible. We're going to do it clearly without blame. The easiest way to do this is to ask a question. So I'll be like, hey, Emily, I've noticed you've been late to swimming the past couple of days. Is everything okay? Right? And so she has the opportunity then to say like, oh my gosh, I can never find the waterfront. Or she has, if she is like being crappy and trying to like miss some of swimming, like she really doesn't have much to say. But you're not being like the attacker boss in that situation. You're showing mutual respect, a helping hand, a coaching approach. Good? So we're going to start with a question. Then we're going to show the negative impact very quickly, but we want to make sure people understand the why, like why we're approaching them about this. So like, yeah, so she might say like, I really can't find the waterfront. It's been hard to get here on time. So I might say, yeah, I totally get it. We have to figure this out together though, because when you're late, we're out of ratio and then the kids can't get in the water in time because we need 3 lifeguards for every 12 kids, right? So I might just do a quick illustration of the negative impact. It's very easy to frame the negative impact illustration in terms of the impact on the children. So if you're struggling with that, think about what is the impact of the kids on the oopsie. And then we want to, if it's appropriate, take the blame for not making the task clear. So especially early on, we might say something like, yeah, the schedule did change from yesterday. Like we should have reiterated that in the staff meeting. I'm really sorry that we didn't. It's not always appropriate to take the blame, but if it is, please do. And then for step 4, you want to go over the task in detail and make sure it's clearly understood. So here I provide a solution. So I might say like, what works for me is turning left at cabin 10, that's when I know it's the path to the waterfront. If you hit cabin 11, you've gone too far, right? Or if it's like an issue where she can't get there in time, I might say, well, what works for me is setting an alarm on my watch since I need a few extra minutes to change into my suit after rest hour, right? So we're going to maybe do a little mutual problem solving. Maybe I'll make a suggestion that drives a solution. And then number 5 is express your continuing trust and confidence in the person. So like, don't worry about this. Lots of people struggle until they get the lay of the land. Like, I'm sure you'll be able to figure out, the path that works best for you in a day or two. Like, thanks for being patient, right? The focus is the kids having a fulfilling experience at camp, right? So we don't want them to leave thinking I've ruined everything, but just say like, that's already very great. So lesson, like, I'm glad you made it. Like, don't worry so much about getting lost. We're here to help. Do you see what I mean? So we're making sure we're like just like walking them through understanding a plausible or reasonable solution, and then moving forward and not dwelling on the correction, right? So that's kind of the flow of the level 2 correction.
Well,
All right?
I think what's key to all of this is that like authenticity is the number one thing to like hold on to here. So like, these are the 5 steps. Work through the 5 steps in your head. But don't be like, all right, so level, like this is, okay, step 1, I'm supposed to say to you, describe the error. So, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't hit all 5 steps, that's fine, right? But be a human in that conversation and be like, yo, dude, like, you were late. Like, let's talk about it. This is what I saw, whatever. Like, however that conversation goes for you and that person, like, be yourself in that moment and try to figure out ways to fit to fit these little pieces in, because it will be from my experience, using Kurtz's framework works a lot better than me just going in blind with this idea that like, I'm going to be myself. So like, I know myself, I know the framework. How do I mash those 2 things together while being a human in that moment?
And think of it more of a flow than like specific steps that you have to follow. So another quick example of this is like a counselor seems to be short with kids or snapping at them during lunch today, right? So hey, Katie, like, I noticed you seem a little on edge today. Is everything okay? Or the kids are really pressing your buttons at lunch. Is everything okay? Right? Do you see how the foot's in the door there, but I'm not attacking her and saying, like, you can't do that. So I give her the opportunity. She probably just doesn't have great sorry, Katie, I'm sure you're great. I'm sure she just doesn't have like the camper management skills yet to have a successful lunch, right? So then we just sit down and we talk through it. Like, I'm really glad we had this conversation. Like, let's try it again, right? But we still have to address it. Like if a counselor has his phone out in front of the campers and is texting furiously, hey, like, I saw you had your phone out, like, is everything okay, right? It might be like, my cat Figaro is like in trouble, I'm really stressed out about it. Or it might be like, oh, I'm just on Snapchat, right? But we don't want to assume, because then we crumble the base of foundation mutual respect that we've created. So to be able to just approach with a question and then talk through it is really crucial. Okay. Let's spend like just a few minutes on tougher situations, and then we'll take questions. Does that sound good, Jack and team? Okay, great. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with us. We hope you are learning and not freaked out. I know, I feel like I've been like saying a lot of things, so I hope they're helpful. Jack, are you getting another costume? Okay, great. Laura's out for a long run, thankfully. All right. So I always say at camp, as a camp leader, I was asked to do a lot of detective work, and I'm a really crummy detective, right? I have a feeling that people are out after curfew, or I have a feeling that, you know, John, the cabin counselor, is letting his kids watch YouTube videos on his phone instead of doing a regular devotion or whatever, but I don't necessarily have hard evidence. And so I think these are some of the hardest situations. Something that's hearsay or a hunch, but you don't have the hard evidence to like approach the person about it, but something still has to be done. We just can't get stuck into this dreaded he said, she said type of conversation, right? So what do? We don't want to crumble our foundation of mutual respect by just jumping to some conclusions, but we need to approach the person. The trick here is to use the power of perception. So let's imagine that, let's just say Phil is a cabin counselor, right? And there have been rumors going around that Phil has not been getting back to his cabin by curfew at night after counselor time off, right? This is like perhaps a common thing that could happen at an overnight camp. And so I have to approach him about it. And so I might say something like, Phil, like, I don't know what the situation is, and I don't know if I ever will know, but there's just this perception on camp that you've been out past curfew. I want to talk with you about this and just make sure it's not the case going forward, no matter what happened in the past, because the talk going around about you being out after curfew is really undermining all the work you're doing with the kids during the day, right? So I can say something like that, and Phil can't be like, that's not true. Like, he could say that's not true, but I can still say, okay, I'm glad to hear that's not true, but we still have a problem because people think it's true. So we need to make sure you are totally on point, so your good work with the kids and your leadership on camp is not undermined going forward. Do y'all see what we did there with that little trick? So to be able to...
This is my favorite trick that you do in the whole world, and I don't know that it's a trick or not, but this, like, there's a perception that works so much better than almost everything else in the world around these kind of things, because you're assuming positive intent, and there's nothing that that like, what are they going to be like? I'm not out after curfew. It's like, I don't care if you're out after curfew. Like, if you, like, I do care about people not being out after curfew if that's a rule, but like, it doesn't matter what's real. What matters is that people think that. And so how do we make sure that that's not the case moving forward? Right. And I think that, like, it lowers the stress between me and the person I'm talking with, and allows us to jump right into let's brainstorm solutions, as opposed to spending any time at all trying to do this, like, argument about whether it's true or not. And I think, like, if nothing else from this whole hour, this is the best thing right here. Right.
So, oh yeah, Phil is now on point in the cabin early every night. And I think the other thing about this that's so effective, it's just like a little bit of a warning, right? It's like, hey, I know something's up, right? And so even if it feels like, no, never, he's like, oh crap, she's on to me, right? I'm not trying to like manipulate him here, but it is a fair warning that you as a supervisor know that something's going on, right? And that you're in tune with what's going on. So it's much easier to address it like that than to wait like 5 more days until I have the video evidence of Phil sneaking out of his cabin, at 12:30 a.m. or whatever I feel like I need. Remember, you're a camp leader. You're not a detective. You're probably a pretty bad detective. So don't waste your time doing detective work. Just approach situations, have the conversation, and move forward from there. With level 3 corrections, I would also approach my supervisor before I had the conversation. I would be like, hey, boss, like, this is going on. This is how I'm going to approach it. Does that sound good to you? My boss would be like, sure, thanks for letting me know. Let me know how it goes, right? I don't want something like that to get to my boss and her to be like, why didn't you tell me about this? So just always looping in your boss is important. And then the other thing I'll tell you that I think is so crucial is to keep a little journal documenting things. So maybe that's like the 6th time I've talked to Phil this summer. I know it's not, but just for sake of argument, let's imagine it's the 6th time I've talked to Phil. Well, it's kind of a big deal. That adds up. But I might second guess myself about how many times I've talked to him. Or maybe something that seems small turns into something bigger. So if you have a journal and at the end of the night and you keep it in a special place or secret place, just write down like, hey, reminded Phil again about curfew or dealt with this or that. Like having just a little log of documentation provides yourself some backup if things get more complicated moving forward and prevents you from second guessing yourself. If you're like, oh, I already reminded him about that once or twice or 3 times, I don't remember, but I'll just remind him again. You can go back in your log and be like, oh my gosh, I've talked to him about this 7 times. Something's not working. I need backup.
So there's a perception that blah, blah, blah. And 2, keep a journal. My 3rd favorite tip, and this one is also from our friend Scott, is to say something like, yeah, could it have happened a little bit? Because like no one ever like admits that they did anything essentially in the whole world. But like, if like I come to Kelly and I'm like, yo, Kelly, like there's a perception that like there's some teasing going on with you and I don't know a lot of the details, but like I want to help figure out how to move forward. Kelly's gonna be like, yo, I would never tease anyone. Like, of course not, whatever. It's like, yo, there's this perception and like maybe if it happened like a little bit, and then Kelly's like, well, I tease him a little bit, and it's like, then you can start to have that conversation. So it's just like another one of these like little turns of phrases that can like lower this like level of like, because no one ever is like, let me take full responsibility for this like situation in which I was a bad person and I made all these mistakes. Like no one does that. But some people, like most of the time, I'm like, yo, you're right. I mean, like maybe I was teasing a little bit, but I thought it was fun. Like I thought we were just like clowning or whatever. And then you can start that conversation, right?
Okay, we just gave you so much info, and I'm going to just summarize from a really high level, and then we'll take a couple of questions. You want to get going right away, building positive relationships with your staff. You want to remember that people came to camp to make a difference, not to mess things up. When you remember that, you approach all of your situations assuming positive intent, right? You want to be the camp leader whose staff respects you because they know that you respect them. In order to do this, you need to build a lot of relationships before camp starts and continue that throughout the course of the summer. You also have to be a good steward of the responsibilities of camp, aka the children. So whenever you're faced with a situation, ask yourself, what is in the best interest of the kids? If it's in the best interest of the kids that you say something, you have to say it, and you should say it kindly, right away, and hopefully discreetly. You also need to fill in the skills or responsibility deficits that your staff has. So sometimes a correction isn't enough and you need to coach them of how to do it better. And so that's the final piece. All right. So if you didn't listen to anything the whole webinar, I think maybe we could have just said that. We're happy to take a couple of questions, and I'm also happy. I'll put my email in the chat. I'm also happy to email with all of you, if you had like a specific question, if you didn't want to bring it up with the group or we didn't get a chance to answer it, just shoot me a little message and I'd be happy to respond about your specific situation. So
And
does anyone
we're going to get into some questions in a second.
Awesome.
And I want to say that we jumped and ran really fast. And I want to say, well, the thing that Kurt said, maybe that was the best of all time, is like, we are the stewards of the kids that are going to come to camp. And I want to say that y'all are the unfair advantage that camp has to make the world the place that I want to live in and that y'all want to live in. And that almost nowhere are there young-ish people who get to play with kids, coach other young-ish people, and like build those connections in a really fun and empowering space. And that works because of you. And it works because of the chance that you're taking to go play with kids and do what's fun, and also make this like huge impact because your attention shows that you care about kids. And like we talked about a lot of these like little skills and those kind of things, and that stuff is important, but it all comes secondary to you all like being the fire and the love that is going to like really make these kids have a great summer. So all that stuff's important, and you are important.
And I thought it was going to be really cool and sit on my porch, and I haven't been out here all year yet, and the light doesn't work, so I'm just sitting in the dark, but I'm with you. I should get that light fixed, but here, just being kind of creepy. Okay, questions in the chat. Okay, so here's a good piece of advice from Cynthia's question. So a lot of times, even if you are like a middle manager, people will bring their problems to you. You have to resist the tendency to solve other people's problems for them or to redirect them to the appropriate person, right? So if you're the horseback riding director and someone's coming to you with like a minor question about the tack, and you know that the assistant director or barn hand is the one to answer that question, right? Even if it's like a kid or a regular counselor, they just be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's a question for Corey. And just like redirect them to the right person. Because if you answer a question that's not really your jurisdiction, people just get in the habit of asking you that question. So to be able to do the redirect is really important, and not always jumping in. Also just kind of like biting your tongue sometimes and letting people figure it out, right? So like that isn't an emergency kind of deal. Sometimes we have to let our staff fail a little bit for them to figure things out. And so if it's not going to be a problem, like a huge problem, if you don't intervene, let them make a little mistake and they'll figure it out faster than if you jumped in and did it for them. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to pose? Okay, so Catherine poses a question about having a camp director who's new with a lot of returning staff members. I want to generalize this question a little bit more because I don't think a ton of people are going to be in that situation. But middle managers, as Jack said, are like kind of the most important people in camp. And I also view you as the bridge between the on-the-ground staff and the big bosses, right? And so to be able to translate both ways is really important. So if the counselors are griping about the camp director, try to enunciate to the counselors where the camp director is coming from. Or if the camp director is complaining about the counselors, try to give the camp director some understanding with the perspective you have about the counselors, right? Sometimes you're like totally in the middle and it's really annoying, but thinking of yourself as more of an interpreter between these two groups that are more separate is a really crucial function at camp. And so if you have a new director and a lot of old staff, being that interpreter between the two groups and facilitating that understanding and relationship building is going to be a crucial role that you can play, because you have a greater understanding of camp than the new director, and you have a greater understanding of the new director and his or her experience than the counselors might have.
And I would say with a new director, spend some extra time, and even though they're the director and you're like working for them or whatever, like invite them to go out for coffee, invite them to go, like just like you would with anybody else, like go, like reach out to them, build the relationship, with the people that are supervising you and the people that you supervise, because the relationships back to the very beginning are going to be kind of the key that hold the glue together that is camp.
Okay, it is 9 p.m. We blasted through so much information. I would guess that by the end of the summer, there will be 30,000 kids that come through the programs if we think about all of us in some. And that is like really that's like a whole city worth of kids. So congrats in advance. Thank you for everything that you do. Please stay in touch with us. I'd love to hear from you. I don't run a camp anymore. I just work with other camp people. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and one of us will get back. But have a great summer. It's going to be fun. And I think sometimes the people that we supervise have an even more impactful life experience than the kids do. And that is a pretty cool opportunity that you have as well. So thank you all very much for spending your Thursday night with us.
Y'all are amazing. You're going to do so much fun stuff this summer, and I'm jealous that I can't just like have a drone that follows all of you around and I get to watch later.
Drone?
Yeah, drones are so fun.
Professor Prem has a drone, so.
Kurtz, we just got a drone for Zombie Gun, and it's so fun. George is so good at flying it.
Oh my gosh.